What if your agents logged into Jira and immediately saw the highest priority items and knew exactly what to work on first? In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how queues work inside of Jira, a faster, smarter way to build them using filters, and the exact method that we used to help one of our clients increase resolution time by 40%. Hey there, I'm Josh, founder of Grid.io, and we've helped teams like Volkswagen, Fivetran, Patreon, and dozens more make Jira work more effectively. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to structure your Jira queues. And I'll even give you our internal queue checklist, the same one that we use to evaluate and fix every client's setup. Now let's break it down. All right, so how do queues actually work in Jira? Now you can think of the Jira project or space sort of as the bucket that holds all of your tickets. Now you could surface all of this information and show every single ticket within a single queue, but that probably won't be very relevant. The much better approach is to create a queue and then filter in, or essentially allow those tickets to be represented inside of that queue. And exactly how I use filters as a hack to create them a little bit faster. Now, what is the purpose of this queue and what really makes a queue great? Now, generally speaking, queues are used to organize your data and help you work quicker with more visibility. Now we could increase that visibility by creating queues that do two things. Number one is to show all the tickets that need action. And number two is to sort them by what needs the most attention, or essentially SLAs. Now queues can obviously show more than that. They could show you basic reporting on things like workload, statuses, and things of that nature. I generally don't recommend to use queues for any kind of reporting. If you are looking for advanced reporting or functionality, I suggest using a dashboard or a filtered search. Now let's jump in and take a look at how we could find our queues. Now inside of any Jira project, on the very left side where your projects are listed, you can expand your JSM project, and in here you'll see a tab for queues. When we click the dropdown, we're met with a couple of different options. Number one is the view all queues, which lists every queue option that we have that is visible to us. And then we also have groups. So groups are essentially groups of queues that are listed in a very specific way. So in my example here, I have all of our regions in one place. Now the last thing that's visible to us in this type of queue is our starred queues. So if I go into any of these other queues, let's say incidents, and I want this to show up on the front because it's something that I look at all the time, and every time I open Jira, it's one of a couple of queues that I'll be clicking on. All I have to do is hover over the star on the top right, click that, and it's going to show in my starred queues on the left side. So these are our published queues. They are what we see once a queue is set up and ready for us to utilize. And if we wanted to edit a queue, there's a couple of places that we can find that. If we wanted to edit, let's say, the incidents queue, what we have to do is go to the right side, click on the three dots, and then click on edit queue. We could also clone, delete, and then give feedback. You could ignore that one. It's just to give feedback to Atlassian. The second place that we could go is to hover over the queues on the left side, click the three dots, and then go to queue settings from here. Now, this view gives us a little bit more options. We see all of our queues listed that we have available to us. We could edit the queues from here as well. We could also create new queues or reorder them in terms of how they're shown when we click on view all queues. We also have our priority groups, which we looked at earlier, and I have group one created. If we wanted to create a new priority group, all we need to do is click the create group button on the top right, and I'll name this group 2 and hit the create button. Now we have two separate groups. I could go back to the queues and select which queues I want to show up for which group. So let's say this one's going to be for incidents and the VIP queue. And if I expand that one, I have those two options within my second group. It's essentially a way to bundle your queues into little groups. Now, what type of queues should your team be using? There are a couple that I recommend for almost every single team, no matter if you're support team, IT team, HR team, whoever you are, whatever your work is, these queues will probably be valuable to you at some point. The first queue is going to be all open tickets. Now, if you remember our two criteria for what makes a queue great, the first one is to show us everything that needs to be addressed, and the second is to sort by what needs most attention. So this all open tickets queue shows exactly what needs to be addressed right away. It's going to be the tickets that came in that are unassigned. So anything new that comes in that has not been addressed yet, or an agent has not looked at yet, is going to be in this queue and available for anyone to pick up at any point. The next one is going to be all my tickets. So all my tickets is going to be anything that is assigned to myself, and it's dynamic. So anyone looking at this queue is going to see exactly what's assigned to them and also is currently unresolved. So this is anything that is in progress, assigned to me, and potentially needs to be addressed, but has not been resolved yet. And the very last one is closed tickets. So we have a queue for recent tickets opened and closed in the past week. Sometimes I see this as an all-time queue where all of your tickets show up when they're resolved. I don't absolutely love that approach, but it is an option because you do end up with a ton of tickets in that queue and it's very hard to manage. But recent tickets, let's say we pull them from the past 2 weeks or past month, those are going to be anything relevant and slightly more recent, so more likely to be needed sometime in the near future. So those are the 3 primary queues to start out with for any team, and you could branch out from here and create whatever queues you want. You could go with VIP, as we have here, incidents to specifically get categorized based on your issue types or work item types. You could see your open tasks if you're using a task issue type, and then you could go by region. So really the possibilities are endless. So feel free to start creating what works best for your team. And I would highly suggest before you actually start to implement these queues, other than the 3 baseline queues that I mentioned, go over how your team currently operates, what are the typical buckets that they're going to be working out of, map them out in terms of what you want to see, and then implement that in Jira versus just going all in and figuring out as you go. That typically tends to cause problems and create a bunch of queues that your team doesn't end up using and that aren't cleaned up later. Now, there are a couple of red flags to watch out for that I see my clients doing all the time with these queues. The first one is overdosing on your queues. So in this case, we have a list of maybe 10 queues, but as soon as you start to go over the threshold of 20 queues, that starts to be a bit of a red flag. And then when you get to 30 and 40 queues, that is a huge red flag. And that probably tells me that your queues are not all being utilized, and maybe you have too many teams within a single Jira project. So do your best to keep your queues roughly around the 20 total queue mark. There's really no need for more queues than that, unless you have a ton of teams utilizing the same project, in which case it might be worth looking into implementing a separate project for those teams. For example, I've seen a lot of IT teams where there's security, where there's networking, where there's on-prem infrastructure teams, all within the same Jira project, whereas your help desk team should have their own project, security should have its own project, so on and so forth. The last red flag that I often see is naming. Try to avoid using confusing names or long names. Keep them as short as you possibly can. For example, incidents, VIP queue, even just adding VIP would be great. Open tasks, all my tickets, all open tickets. Avoid using more than like 5 to 7 words maybe in total. Keep these very clear and don't create queues that are essentially duplicates or identical. Make sure they're defined very specifically and each queue has a purpose and doesn't overlap too much with other queues. Now, once you have your queues mapped out and you know exactly how you want them to look, let's go over how to actually implement them in Jira. All right, quick pause. If this already sounds like the kind of solution that you're looking for, but don't want to implement this on your own, click the link in the description to book a free Jira consultation with myself or my team, and we'll walk you through the queues, your configuration, your workflows, and show you exactly where the friction is and how we can help you out. Now back to the good stuff. So to create a new queue, we'll hover over our queues tab on the left, click the 3-dot icon, and go to queue settings. In here, we have the create queue button. So I'll create that and give this queue a quick name. So we don't have one for service requests, so I'll go ahead and use service requests as an example for this one. Now, if you need to jump in and quickly create some queues and get them applied, this is a great place to do it. But let me show you a quick trick using filters to make this a little bit more seamless. So on the left tab bar, you'll have your filters. And if you don't see them, click on customize sidebar and make sure that they show up. But we could go into our filters and click on search issues. Or this might say work items for you. In this new tab, I like to set up my searches because it's a little bit easier between this view and then the JQL to actually narrow down my search, then get it applied to my project later. So I'll clear all my filters and start from scratch. So I'll make sure that I select the project IT support because this filter view brings in all projects, and I'm gonna wanna make sure that I only see the IT projects items. So from there, I'll go out and fill in the rest of my parameters. In this case, I'll make sure to have service requests as the only option. From there, I'll also make sure that the resolution is not done. And if that's not available on this top bar, I'll go to more filters, type in resolution, or search for whatever other field that you'd like. And then I'll select unresolved, which just means not done. The other option for this, which I like to use in some scenarios, if you don't have a resolution set, is status category. So you could search for status, and then you should see status category. Select that. And now we can select in progress and to do and exclude all of our done statuses. I'll clear this for this example since I am using resolutions, but that is an option if you're not using them. Once I have all my parameters ready, what I like to do is switch over to JQL, and then I can copy and paste this into my new queue. So I'll select all of this, I'll copy it, and then I'll go back to my queues and I'll go to my JQL option. I'll select everything and I will paste. Once that's pasted, I see the information represented on the list down below. And now I could go ahead and create my queue. But before I do so, I want to make sure that my columns and my sorting are set up correctly. So the next big thing with queues is to set up your columns to number one. So if you remember the second thing that we covered, which is very important for a great queue, is to show what's most important. So we typically want to do this by sorting top to bottom, with most urgent items being at the top and the least urgent items being at the bottom. Now, when looking at a queue, so the first thing we're going to want to make sure is that we add a priority tab to our queue. And this is going to help us know exactly what the priority is, but I wouldn't sort based on priority. What I would add next is an SLA. So priorities are great to see, but I don't sort by priority when looking at what's most important. I always sort by SLA. You could either sort by time to first response or time to resolution. I do like to mix these up depending on the queue. For example, if it's the all open queue and it hasn't been assigned yet, sorting by first response is probably going to be the best option versus looking at the queue that has tickets already assigned to me, which probably means I've already taken some kind of action on those items. I would typically sort by resolution. So let's first of all make sure that that column is added, and I'll search for time to first response, and then you could add just that one, or you could add both. So I'll search for time to resolution. And now we have both of our SLAs showing up on the very right side. And I highly recommend removing any fields that are completely irrelevant. You do not want this queue to show you anything that isn't relevant about this ticket. So if this is a queue of assigned to me, I might remove the assignee because it's completely irrelevant in that scenario, because the whole queue is only filled with tickets that are actually assigned to me. So I might delete something like assignee, and then remove any other fields that may not be relevant, like created. And one other tip I have is to make sure you always include your issue type regardless of the queue. This gives you a very visual representation of which issue type this is. And I know it might be redundant, but it is very helpful from a visual perspective. It also takes up almost no space, and that's why I pretty much always recommend having it. So once we have all of our columns defined, the last thing to do in our JQL is to define our sorting. So I'll add another line, and we already have a suggestion here for order by, so I'll click on that. Click on space, and then I'll search for time, and I have an option for time to first response, and I'll add that in, and now our queue is automatically sorted by time to first response, and you can see that it's selected right there by this visual indicator. Now again, when we save this queue and view it, we could change the sorting options at any point, but this is going to be our default anytime we refresh or come back to this queue on a later date. Okay, so my queue is ready. I'll go ahead and click create, and now that I have my queue created, it should be showing up in all of my queue lists. And in here, I have service requests. I could jump in here, take a look at it. And as you can see, the sorting is already defaulted to time to first response. We could change it to time to resolution, priority, or anything else. And this here is exactly why I don't tend to sort by priority. So as you can see, these top three items which have a quicker time to resolution are actually lower priority. So if we sort this list by priority, we lose sight as to what actually needs to get done first. Now, it may still be relevant to see the priority on this view, but I would definitely tend to stay away from sorting on it. Quick side note, when you are setting up your SLAs, make sure to define the SLA targets based on priority. So anything with a higher priority has a really quick target. Anything with a lower priority, let's say low, has a longer target. That way your SLAs actually make sense in a scenario like this, where two tickets get submitted at the same time. One is low priority, one is high. The high priority has a quicker SLA time. Now that you've seen the structure, it's time to put it to work. Download the queue checklist down below. It's the same one that we use to build and audit every one of our clients' Jira environments. We use it to spot gaps, clean up the clutter, and make sure that every queue actually helps your team move faster. Grab it now and build queues that drive action.